My dad passed away the night before I began my senior year of college. I obviously missed the first week and was never the same. I lost a friend, confidant, and advisor suddenly and unexpectedly. 7 months later, my girlfriend and I learned she was pregnant, and one of the first things she said to me was, "We're going to be okay. We're just bringing back a part of what you lost." This was widely helpful and comforting since I was 22 and never held a baby before as an only child with an uncle that never had kids and cousins that lived 8 hours away. Shortly after we found out at school, our puppy started to bark softly at my desk. That desk happened to be the last thing my dad and I put together, the day before he died, before we got dinner. Suddenly, there was a crash, something falling in the corner, which sent the dog into a state of constant barking. Not just the "I think I heard something" bark she had previously done. Waking up in the morning, I saw a box of binder clips on the floor. There is no way they moved from the position they were in when I went to bed. They were firmly on the desk and not near an edge. Several years went by and my daughter was about 2, playing in my mom's house on a visit. I was talking to her mom and all of a sudden my daughter poked her head around the kitchen, waved and said, "Hi, Joey." My mom and girlfriend looked at her and asked, "What did you just say?" She had never heard the name or any of us talk about my dad before, but here she was saying hi to him. Her response was, "Just saying hi," innocently without a clue what was meant. Later that year, visiting my girlfriend's parents, we slept there one cold New England night. They have a lot of property and let people keep horses in the one area that was penned in. One of the horses had died earlier that day, and late night our daughter wanted to get in bed with us because the wind was howling, so she gave us each a kiss and said, "Good night, horsey ghost," which sent a chill through me. Again, she didn't see this horse had died or been back to see them since it was winter. The two of us in the darkness, lit only by the moon outside the window, mouthed "WTF" to each other. This has continued throughout our life, occasionally asking me for certain things that only have meaning to my dad and stories he would tell, using certain words and phrases, and playing with toys. She will occasionally be talking to Joey. At 10, I'm starting to wonder if she truly might have taken his place in the world, or just has that subconscious connection. Could she be a potential empath, since she is wildly emotional at times? I don't know nearly enough to know if I'm even in the right realm there. Or could it just be that she has a pure soul and certain things are revealed to her? Not sure if this is just me, but no matter what time, place, who I'm with, sober or fucked up, but the shadow people casually walk around Earth. They're not fully opaque, it's like a fuzzy haze and an outline of a person. Imagine a silhouette of energy. First time I started to see them was when I was around 14 and I would go out to my house's shed to smoke cigarettes. I would see them walk past me, down the road. They just walk around. At the time I called them wanderers, but I think shadow people is a better fit. One time stands out more to me when I was outside smoking weed and cigarettes by myself behind a shed. I turned around to face the shed and I see one of them peering around the corner, right into my eyes. There were hands and fingers that were curled around the corner, and in the middle was a clear head no facial features, but staring right at me. We made eye contact for maybe 10 or 15 seconds, but it just slowly creeps around the shed out of sight. I've never really had a fear of them at any point, even the last one, though they would give me a slight spook walking down the road in the dark just to come face to face with one. But letting go of the worry of making too long a post, I'll tell the one time I actually felt scared of one. I was inside, sitting on my couch. I don't entirely remember, but it was probably high on weed. And from my seat, I can see perfectly into this one room. This one room I've always kind of had a spook from, like an open closet door at night. But this time I look up to see one, but not like I've ever seen previously. This one was a child, or at least child height, and it wasn't partly translucent like all the others. Standing in the doorway, clear as can be, it was a fully opaque silhouette of fuzzy, tense energy, with two dark pits where eyes are supposed to be. I'm sitting there staring at it. It's staring at me, and we hold. We probably held our gazes together for about 1 or 2 minutes, but I swear it felt like the longest time I've ever been in that seat. As it glares back at me, my whole body is filled with every negative emotion my body can process, and that's apparently a surprisingly large amount. Fear, loathing, wrath, sadness, hopelessness, confusion, everything horrifying and terrifying thing that's ever happened in this existence. Every great tragedy, genocide, shooting, and just every general fucked up shit in life. A full, deep, detailed understanding of all these rushed through my head, down my torso, then down into my arms and legs, and all while looking at what may have been something little or a whole lot more than a wanderer or shadow person. Sitting there, scared shitless, it slowly walks down the steps and it's gone. I haven't seen it since, but I will say that I'm on the border between wanting to and not wanting to encounter it again. They're all still everywhere to this day. I have no idea what they are or if they're even real in any way, shape or form of the real world. This happened several decades ago. A friend got 3 of us using a Ouija board. I thought it was a goofy fake. As it got weirder, I wondered if there might be some kind of unintentional, subconscious influence happening. It started harmlessly, but it got darker. Many spirits became threatening over time and began to admit being the same individual. I felt I was being pranked, so I quit. The third friend, not the instigator, seemed weirdly obsessed and wanted to do it more, and started doing it alone. Then, one night at an outdoor party, the instigator got it out with the obsessed friend for a spooky laugh. There were about 10 teenage boys watching, mocking, and laughing, The spirit eventually identified as the usual negative spirit and used some new names that many, many years later I saw associated online with demonic entities. Anyway, the spirit got really pissed by the mocking and insulting comments and questions, especially from one loud friend. It also mentioned other people we knew were talking to it. The loud friend thought we were messing with him and threatened to destroy the board. The spirit directly threatened him, so he grabbed the board and broke it into two pieces. There was a bizarre "now what" pause, and then the group decided we should burn the board, being the best idea for the group of drunk teens. At this point, most felt they were just going along with a joke, but some were getting freaked out. So, we tried to burn the board. It would not light. We had to go to a 7-Eleven and empty 2 entire containers of charcoal lighter fluid before it finally caught. As it burned, an obsessed friend was visibly upset and mumbled that he knew how to make one anyway. I asked, "What the fuck?" and he said, "It told me how." Days later, we found out a group of kids from the same high school also was on a Ouija board that night, and it also mentioned us to them, including that we had made it angry. This was before cell phones, and we were at an outdoor party, so nobody knew about the other group on party night. Several more days later, the loud friend who was threatened was in a serious car accident, being ejected from a pickup. He survived. As far as I know, the story ends there. I was not aware of anyone using a Ouija board after that. I was around 17 when this happened. I was a smoker, but my parents didn't like it when I would smoke in the house, so I would always go into our pantry that has a tiny window and smoke in there. I often have trouble falling asleep, so I would always go for a smoke between midnight and 3 a.m. So, everyone in the house is sleeping. I'm bored, so I'm on my way to smoke, and as soon as I get in front of the pantry door, I just stop. I had this awful feeling in my gut, and I just couldn't get in there, even though I was craving a smoke really bad. I go back to bed and I make another attempt later, but the same thing happens. But I think nothing of it and I just go to bed. Same thing happens next night, but I do get in the pantry and I start smoking. A couple of minutes pass by and I hear a light knock on my pantry door. I thought it was my mom just making sure it's me in the pantry, so I just say it's me. I continue smoking my cigarette, and a couple of minutes later I hear 3 louder knocks. I have a short temper, so I immediately open the door and annoyingly say, "It's me!" I thought it was my mom, but to my shock, no one was there. I just stand there for a second, then I close the door and just try to convince myself that it was in fact my mom, who somehow disappeared in a second. A minute later, I'm on my way to my room and I see my mom exiting the bathroom. I ask her if she knocked on the pantry door. She just tells me to go to bed because she was half asleep and couldn't be bothered. My family didn't believe me and they thought I was crazy. But in just a few hours, they will think otherwise. That night, I went to a birthday party and was sleeping over at a friend's place. When I came back the following morning, my family had a complete change of heart. It was because my brother had a paranormal experience as well. While I was at the party, he was playing League of Legends and had headphones on because he was talking to his friends. All of a sudden, he felt someone grab his hoodie. He thought it was me or Mom telling him to keep quiet, but nope. No one was there. So, the next day we just lit the frankincense and did other Eastern European rituals. They worked for a while. I still to this day don't know what that was. May I add that this all happened around a big Christian Orthodox holiday. I've had a lot of paranormal experiences in my house, and they happen from time to time. Sometimes I would have a paranormal experience twice in a month. Sometimes it would happen once a year, etc. I'm used to them at this point because, thank God, none of those experiences were dangerous. Just creepy. Oh, and I live about 100 meters away from a cemetery. My uncle, who worked for a major airline, befriended a couple. The wife was Filipino and the husband was Japanese. They have a young daughter around 1 to 3 years old who mostly spoke Japanese, and they lived in a townhouse somewhere in the Philippines. They invited my uncle to visit their house one day, and they invited me to come along with them. So it was my uncle, my 3 cousins, and I that went there for a relatively good time and planned to stay overnight. The day was normal. We went to a mall, took a dip in the pool, and ate good food. We have some language barrier problems since the husband and daughter doesn't speak Filipino or English, but the wife translated for us, so it wasn't all a big deal. Their house, as I said, was a townhouse. It was enough to fit their family, but too small with guests like us. They had 3 floors. The first floor was turned into a storage or something where it's not really suited to be occupied with a dirty kitchen at the back. The front door of their house was non-existent. The main entrance to their house was a gate that was around a foot from the doorway, but other than that, the doorway was wide open. The stairs have 2 doors, one on the bottom and one on the second floor. The second floor was their living room and a small kitchen area. This is where we planned to sleep. Then there was the third floor where the family's bedroom was, but their stairs didn't have any door. We settled in for the night on the floor with blankets and pillows, and I don't recall what arrangement we had, but who's beside who anymore since this happened back in 2011. So, anyway, we went to bed, but after some time I was woken up by my cousin, who I'll call Rose. She was the second daughter out of 3 and who I know was somewhat sensitive to the paranormal since they did something in the past to talk to her best friend who died early. Rose was probably beside me as I was the one who she woke up first. She shook me awake and asked me to listen if I heard something. Groggily, I tried to listen for anything, and after a few minutes I heard knocks on the door. That woke me up fully. She explained that she hasn't gone to sleep and was on the phone. It was past midnight and the knocking on the second floor door started, and that's when she freaked out and woke me up. The knocking was in 4 successions with at least 2 or 3 seconds in between those 4, and then they'd stop, and after a minute or 2 it would knock 4 times again. The knocking didn't stop at all since she woke me up, and it was not so loud but solid and continuous, like a human was programmed to knock that way, exactly the same. We were both scared but didn't move to answer the door or ask who was behind the door, since we both knew nobody could get in or was downstairs, and it was not somebody from outside as there was no main door to the house, and the knocking came from the second door of the staircase. We woke up her older sister and asked her to listen when she did. She stayed silent for a few seconds and tried to listen to which knocks came, but she said she didn't hear it and went back to sleep, pissed off, thinking we were playing with her. We also woke up her younger sister and she told us the same. Rose and I looked at each other in fear, and we just tried our hardest to go back to sleep, covering our ears. The only reason why I can hear it, because I have already established that my hearing is also sensitive to these types of experience rather than see entities from a young age. Though I can still see glimpses, but not that clear. In the morning, during breakfast, we told everyone what we experienced, and the wife told her husband that she thinks it was a mononoke or yurei, which was monster and spirit in Japanese. It was scarier for them because the number 4, shi in Japanese, which means death, is considered to be bad, like how 13 is to Western culture. I just wanted to post this here since I'm up 30 minutes after this just happened, and I don't see myself falling asleep anytime soon. To give some background, my boyfriend gifted me one of those mechanical movement music boxes a while ago. At first we played it pretty often because it was a cute song from a movie we both adore, but for at least a month now it has been sitting on a shelf next to my bed, unplayed. Recently I've been feeling some weird energy next to my side of the bed. I'm an empath and I tend to be sensitive to energies, but in all honesty, when it's time to go to sleep, I try to dismiss it because who really wants to have ghost activity? Not me. I know it's a hard pass. Plus, I love horror films, and I binged a series recently and assumed I freaked myself out with a little. But some nights it's been harder to ignore. I've been scared to get up and use the restroom during the night. One night I even switched places in bed with my boyfriend because the gaze of it felt so strong. I've had moments where I think I see something in the dark but dismiss it because it's too frightening to acknowledge. My boyfriend even had a bout of sleep paralysis in which he dreamt that I asked him what was behind me as I faced him in bed. Tonight I struggled again with the fear and anxiety, but I eventually managed to drift in and out of sleep until 4 a.m. That little mechanical movement music box started to play the tune entirely on its own. My boyfriend and I were startled awake, and at first I was disorientated and thought his alarm was going off. Anyways, we immediately turned the light on as we were both pretty freaked out. He's been able to go back to bed, but I burned some sage and did a blessing to try to ease my mind, which hasn't been particularly effective as I'm writing this now. I looked at the little box and tried to see if there was any way it could have done what it did on its own, and I have no answer. You have to twist the little knob at the bottom twice for it to even play. I don't know, you guys, I want to be wrong because the idea of something in my home, despite all of my protection charms, is really frightening. Hopefully the sun comes out soon so I can feel safe to sleep. So, when I was a junior in high school, I suffered from severe depression and my home life wasn't exactly rainbows and sunshine. It was nearing the end of October and my school was throwing a homecoming dance. I didn't really want to go, but my friends convinced me. I won't go into great detail, but the night ended horribly. It was the straw that broke the camel's back. Fast forward to the next morning, I woke up puffy-eyed and feeling absolutely hopeless. My mom and brother left to go to the store, leaving me home alone. I didn't waste a minute. I went to the medicine cabinet, grabbed all the pill bottles I could in my arms and went all in. The last thing I remember was pulling up to the ER, my mom trying to get me out of the seat. It all happened so fast. I didn't text my friends, I loved them, I didn't indicate in the slightest what I intended on doing, just nothing. Clearly, my attempt didn't work as I'm writing this now, but while in the hospital I had a seizure. This may be important later. After a few days at the psychiatric facility, I was allowed phone calls, so I called my best friend and told her what happened. She was shocked. Rumours were flying around school, per usual at a small private school, that I'd gotten someone pregnant, my mom pulled me out of school, etc. One guy was joking to a group of people, my two best friends among them, that maybe I died. Super funny, I know. My best friend P said she felt a chill run down her spine as soon as he said it. She gave him an earful. My other friend A pulled P aside and they started discussing what could have happened. A told P that he thought he saw me walking down the street a couple of days before and how he tried to yell to me, but the person didn't turn or respond. P said that she had an awful feeling in her gut that something was very wrong. I often forget that this happened because, understandably, I want to put the past behind me. It was a long time ago. I saw a post of A's earlier today and thought how odd it was of someone as rational and realistic as him to see what he did and feel confident enough that it was me to share what he saw with P. It makes me wonder if my soul was in an in-between state, just wandering around, or maybe I did die and just switched into a reality where I lived. Spooky stuff. My name is Trevor and I live in southern Maine. My whole life I've felt connected to something other than what's in front of me. Everywhere I experience small things, and sometimes those things aren't easily explained. My most recent and strange experience happened just late last night, the night of October 17th, 2019. I moved into a new apartment in June. It's owned by a family friend, so before I moved in, I painted the walls and did some other personalization, just for fun. The first time I stepped foot into this apartment, I felt very uneasy. I'm not sure what it is, but the place just doesn't feel right. Many things have happened while I've been here, but last night was by far the worst. Maine was being hit by a thunderstorm. I had gone to bed expecting to lose power at some point in the night. I woke around 3:30 a.m. and felt like someone or something was watching me. I have a nightlight near my bed which was projecting a shadow onto my wall and ceiling. The shadow became bigger and bigger until I felt like whatever was there was right behind me. I started to roll over when the power went out and I could no longer see anything. I don't remember falling back asleep. I woke up for work around 6:15 a.m. per usual, but felt very strange. After getting up and walking into the bathroom, I realized my jaw was very sore. I also had a gash on the inside of my lip that wasn't there before. It's like I'd been punched in the face, and my jaw is still sore at the time of this writing. I really don't know what this was, and I absolutely could have been dreaming. I just wanted to share this in case anyone else has experienced with anything similar, waking up with cuts and bruises you don't have before you went to bed. So I have a sort of ghost story. It's going to be pretty long because it's two different stories really, but possibly the same entity. These two incidents actually happened, and I to this day have no damn clue what it was I heard and saw. We've had a ton of other occurrences in between, but none so terrifying as these two, other than one of my kids being hit in their sleep and a handprint being left on them. Anywho, I live in Louisiana. Sort of like the breeding ground for this kind of stuff, right? The block I live on is just wrong. I could go on about it, but I won't. We've joked that it may be its own little hellmouth. Incident number 1. I'm basically the hood cat lady. I leave food out and toys and even a cute little bed for my little friends. There's one that especially took a liking to me that I liked to just sit outside at night and early morning and cuddle with it for a bit. It was around 2 a.m. As usual, I go to refresh bowls and I noticed how cold it was in the middle of the summer in Louisiana. My door was shut, so it's not the AC. I got this odd feeling and I began hearing whispers, and this voice, I kid you not, was an octave louder than Voldemort's. Look up, look at me. Stupid me, I looked up, and in the back seat of my car, where obviously no one was at 2 a.m., was my son. My 2-year-old son who was in the house. Asleep. Only the features were off, as if he was only a badly drawn memory from someone who had only seen him once. The eyes were too narrow, the smile was too wide, and only half his body was showing. I looked down, finishing my task, trying to look as calm as possible, and moved back into the house, locked and chained the door, and salted all the windows and doors. Incident 2. My wife works evening closing shifts that bring her home usually after 2 a.m. One night in our room, with my toddler in bed with me, I had begun hearing knocking sounds and muffled voices around 10 p.m. Assuming as neighbors, I ignored it, but as the night went on, the knocking sounds began to sound as if they were coming from closets and actual walls, even the ceiling. The voices got closer and began to sound more male. At 1 a.m., there was a bang at our back door, which is in the bedroom, leading to a fenced-in backyard with a chain and lock that only my wife has the key to, 'cause, it's the hood and we have small kids. The voice I heard was literally my husband, not my wife. It's me. Let me in, please, love. In her exact tone and using the name she calls me. Even my son jumped up, yelling, "Mommy's home." But something was off. She never comes to the back door. She calls me or presses the doorbell. We have a ring. So, what the fuck? I almost went to open the door because it sounded so much like her, but instinct kicks in and I grabbed my son and my phone and moped out the room to my son's room up front, because brought my daughter into his room and we locked the door. I called my wife and you guessed it, she was still at work. It could have possibly been her. When she came home, she looked around and she saw no evidence of anyone being there and no camera footage. No neighbors saw or even heard anything. And that's a lot, 'cause over here, everyone is nosy and knows everyone and everything at all hours. My family has 2 people, me and my mother. My mother's a teacher. She teaches literature in high school. I was still a middle school student at the time. Usually, after a stressful day, my mother would go out with her friends. About 2 a.m., she came home, reeking of beer. On the occasion of her wearing nice clothes, she wanted me to take pictures for her. The front of my house is mostly a large glass door with iron bars crossed to make a frame. She modelled in front of the door. After a while, I reviewed what I'd just taken. Everything seemed so normal until one picture that I noticed something strange. There's a white streak behind the glass door next to my mother's face. I tried to take a closer look. Unmistakably, it's a face. A white face with two black eyes looking straight into the camera in a creepy way. So black that it seems to be just an eye socket and a toothless wide mouth. Everything seems to be twisted into the center of the face. I have a feeling that this is not something that should exist, like I just saw something I shouldn't have, but it's clearly appearing right in front of my eyes. I started to feel cold. The more I looked, the more scared I became. My mother noticed and wanted to see what I just took. I told her there was someone behind the door. She yelled at me, called me nonsense, but I know my eyes don't deceive me. And of course her reaction confirmed everything. Her face darkened. She immediately sobered up, told me to remember to close and lock the door, turn off all the lights, and tell me to go to my bedroom. She also immediately entered her room and closed the door. The next day I checked the camera again. I couldn't find the picture. Maybe she deleted it. Since then, she and I have not talked about this anymore. It's been behind my mind for so many years. I really want to tell someone. It's probably crazy enough for you not to believe me, but I know I haven't lost my mind. I know what I've seen. And even my imagination is not an element here because she saw it too. My family doesn't worship anything, and I'm not so superstitious, nor do I believe in ghosts, but it was an event that 8 years later I still can't forget. To give some background information, I'm spiritual. If you don't know what that is, spirituality involves the recognition of a feeling or a sense of belief that there is something greater than myself, something more to being human than the sensory experience. I believe in souls, spirit guides, and reincarnation, etc. My friend is a medium and can connect with spirit guides and also ghosts and souls. My friend and I were hanging out at her place. We had the house to ourselves and decided to do a session. She was doing a session on me, and I asked normal questions like, what's my future like, and so on, until I asked a question about one of my friends. This friend of mine had some trouble and has been battling depression, anxiety, and some other things. I asked if we could try and connect with her spirit guides and ask what was happening to her. We tried that. Bad idea. My friend who was doing the session had her eyes closed and was holding my hand. Her face started to twitch in an uncomfy way, but I didn't want to disturb her, so I said nothing. Suddenly, the room we were in had this weird vibe, an unwelcoming vibe, just a very unpleasant vibe. She suddenly stood up from the couch where we were sitting on and she went to grab some incense lights and started saying, "You're not welcome here. Get out of my house." I've never experienced anything like this as I was new to all of this at the time. Suddenly, this terrible feeling came rushing to me. I don't know how to describe it. I think anyone that met a ghost or a soul knows what I'm talking about. The best way I can put it is trapped. I felt trapped. No matter where I went in the room, I felt trapped and small, like I was someone's prey, like I was being watched. Thankfully, my friend got this ghost soul out of the house and we sat down to talk about what just happened. My friend told me this is what is called a clinging spirit. It's a spirit that feeds on negativity and sadness, or in my friend's case, her depression and anxiety. My friend told me what she saw afterwards. To understand this, you need to understand the floor plan. So, right as you enter the house, there's a staircase that goes upstairs, and on the right is the kitchen, and on the left is the living room where we were. Neither of these rooms has doors, it's just a wall with a hole in it. The living room couch is at the opposite end of this entranceway, and so you have to have a full view from there. My friend said in the doorway she saw this tall and skinny black goo. It has no face, but it had the shape of a woman's body. The moment it appeared in the doorway, it started screaming at my friend, and like a very loud, painful screaming, a horror movie scream. The moment she opened her eyes, the ghost wasn't there, but the feeling of its presence was. That's also what I felt. After all this happened, we called my friend's mom and sister, and we slept in the guest room as we were too afraid to go upstairs to my friend's bedroom. We were 15 when this happened. This happened some time ago in the early 2000s. It's not made up. I really experienced these events, even if they sound crazy. My parents were going through a rough patch and my dad had moved out of the house. I was in high school at the time. It started out one night my mom and I were watching TV. It sounded like scratching noises, heavy dragging noises in the attic, and we immediately assumed raccoons. I don't remember the timeline exactly, but we kept hearing the noise, and each time, maybe a few nights later or a week later, the noise slowly crossed from one end of the attic all the way to the other end of the house. My mom did have a company come check for animals, but they didn't find any. Then the real scary stuff started happening. I was asleep one night and woke up to a figure next to my bed. My best description is a shadow person. I slowly grabbed my blanket and covered myself up with just a peephole to watch it. It was entirely black and even darker than the dark room around it, and it looked like the darkness was slowly steaming off it. I was both amazed and terrified. I watched it for what felt like hours until it slowly backed out of the room. I was afraid to leave my bed and eventually I fell asleep. The next morning at breakfast, my mom said she saw someone standing at the foot of her bed, and then I told her what I had seen. There was a heaviness in the house after that. Other times I remember waking up at night and hearing voices and whispering. Sometimes I could hear music playing like it was an old theater or something. When I peeked outside my room, the noises would cease. One night the dresser drawing at the foot of my bed slammed open and shut. Another night Mom started screaming in the middle of the night and I grabbed my baseball bat and ran into her room. Just outside of our bedroom door was a chair and I swear I saw this shadow sitting in it as I ran into her room. She told me someone has laid down on the bed next to her. As the events and encounters progressively got more frightening, we were afraid to stay in the house at night. I would sleep with all the lights on or I couldn't sleep at all. We started spending the night in a hotel. Even in the daytime you would hear things like someone calling your name. I can't remember how long the haunting lasted and I'm guessing at least 3, 4 months had passed, and my mother was tired of being afraid in her own house, so she had the house blessed. Sometime in the next few days, my mom was heating up a cup of water or tea in the microwave, and it exploded in the microwave. I asked her how long she'd put it in the microwave, then boom, these loud scratching sounds ran down the walls around us, and a dark mist filled the house, the voices and whispers all around us. My mother and I grabbed each other's arms in horror. All these sounds were happening simultaneously, and then this very deep, unnatural voice began talking all over the house and all over the other noise. It was deep and unnatural, and if it was some sort of language, I've never heard anything like it, not even to this day. As my mother stood there and we looked down the hall towards the voice. Something was there like a fucking horror movie. It was quadrupedal, made of the darkness, like drawing with a sharpie in the air. It had what looked like several rows of spines down its back, and then my mother started to pray, and so did I. The creature slowly backed down the hall and into a bedroom, and slowly all the noises and voices faded away, and the mist and the haze seemed to follow it down the hallway until everything returned to normal. I never saw or experienced anything again in that house. If anyone was curious, yes, when friends came over, they would have experiences as well. I've had other experiences since then, but nothing like back then. I'm sure a lot of you reading this can relate to losing someone. I've definitely endured quite a bit of loss throughout my lifetime, though this specific one hit harder than ones before and has taken a while to come to terms with. In 2019, I received a phone call late at night from a close friend of mine, Levi. He wasn't the type to call, he was more of a texter, so when I saw his name flashing on my cell phone at 2 a.m, I knew it couldn't be good. I picked up the phone and walked out of my bedroom and went into the next room to take the call so I wouldn't wake up my girlfriend and our newborn. I was told within the first 20 seconds of the call that there'd been an accident and our friend Tyler was gone. I went from half asleep to wide awake in a split second. What? Gone? What the fuck does that even mean, Levi? I got shitty. I got pissed because I didn't believe him, until he told me again that Tyler was gone. There was an accident when he was driving and he was dead. He told me himself and a few others of our friends group were all at his house and told me I could come over if I wanted to. After we got off the phone, I fell to the floor. I was in a complete shock and disbelief. There's no way this is happening. This isn't real. A few moments later, I went back into my bedroom and picked up my 4-month-old sleeping son, walked downstairs to sit in our recliner and just bawled my eyes out for hours. Tyler had been texting me that night. He asked me what I was up to around 9 or 10. Myself and my girlfriend were just on the couch playing Overcooked on the Switch. I'd asked him the same about what he was doing. He responded that he was drunk. I assumed he was just at his house or another's. He was a very social dude and loved to be out and about drinking with people. He was loved by many and a friend to all. I'd removed myself mostly from that lifestyle because of getting into a serious relationship and having my first child. I'd fallen asleep while we were messaging back and forth, and his last message read, "You winning?" I never thought to ask where he was or if he needed a ride. He wrecked his truck on the way home from the bar that night, just an hour or so after that last message was sent to my phone. The guilt of not asking him if he was okay and if he needed a ride or anything, just assuming he was good. That guilt took over my life and consumed me to the point where I was now drinking heavily myself on a regular basis. Whiskey every single night, blacking out to numb the pain and guilt. I almost lost my job. I stopped taking care of myself. Most importantly, I stopped being a good partner and father. My girlfriend at one point had her car packed with all her belongings and my son's, telling me to say goodbye to him as I was wasted sitting in my garage. Somehow I was fortunate enough that she ended up staying and I slowly got my shit together. Fast forward to a few years later. Throughout this time, I would occasionally talk to Tyler, whether that be in my head silently or even out loud at times when I was alone, asking him to please tell me you're okay. Somehow find a way, please. I'd come to terms with his death, but I didn't have that closure and reassurance still, that if it makes any sense. I had a few dreams where I thought he was there, but it felt cloudy and I would forget a lot, if not all, the details of the said dream. However, a few months back, I had another dream, one so real, so vivid about him. This is strange and hard to explain, but we're all a giant nerds coupled with heavy levels of sarcasm within my friends group. Stupid, childish, immature, sarcastic humor is the norm. So, when my dream started off with me and Tyler walking into a bathroom together and then both walking up to a toilet and seeing a huge turd, we both started yelling, "Poop!" and dying laughing. Weird, I know, but it was just us. Then all of a sudden, the back of the wall behind the toilet opened up like a door. Bathroom completely disappeared in front of us. The most amazing, beautiful scenery lay before me. Huge mountains, lush green grass and gorgeous blue skies. Picture that first time in Breath of the Wild when Link walks up to the edge of the mountain and you get that first look of how beautiful that world was. Tyler turned to me and didn't say a word but just looked at me. I knew instantly without him even speaking that he had got to leave. Go back into this place, and I couldn't follow him. "You don't have to go, man. Please don't. Stay here for a little longer." I was pleading with him. He still said nothing, just smiled and walked into that world and kept eye contact with me as the door closed back up. The dream immediately faded to black and I woke up. Tyler was 27 when he left us. He was a great friend. We spent so much time together over the years, and good times far outweighing the bad. And I could spend hours telling stories about the stupid shit we got into and somehow got out of. This is the first time I've told this story, and I know it's long-winded, and after some other stories on here about similar experience, I thought this would be the best time to share mine and get it off my chest. I believe he visited me that last time to tell me he's okay. Tyler, I love you, man. I miss you. Every single fucking day. I cannot wait till we meet again, my friend. Last year in 2021, the Sunday after Thanksgiving, I was sleeping by my girlfriend in her apartment. It was probably around 3 or 4 a.m. I got up to use the restroom, kind of had a hard time going back to sleep. So, maybe 5 minutes or so after getting back into bed, I was laying on my back with my head facing left towards the wall. I had my left arm raised over my head, hanging off the edge of the bed. My girlfriend was sleeping with her back facing me, and my right arm was on my stomach. It was dead silent. My girlfriend has a loud little dog who barks at anyone that walks by the front door. I didn't hear no footsteps, no voice, or form of movement. All of a sudden, I feel someone grab my left hand that's hanging off the bed. At first, I thought it was my girlfriend, so I didn't think much of it at first, until I realized that my left hand is on the opposite side. I opened my eyes, but I could only see from my right eye because my left eye was blocked by my arm. Without turning my head, I saw a man through a mirror on the wall. His face was painted white, pasty white. He had shoulder-length hair that was curly and a light dirty brown colour hair. I could only see what the nightlight in my room illuminated. It was definitely a white man with very strong built body type. He had no clothes on from what I could tell, and he was holding something in his right hand. It was like a stick with something bushy at the end, and it was hovering above my stomach. Man, I thought somebody broke into the apartment or something, I don't know, but still no noise at all, no movement, and the grip of his hand was not hard at all. I was looking at him for a good 10 seconds. I finally worked up the courage to turn my head and get a visual of this man, but he vanished. And when I looked back the other way, the mirror I saw him through vanished as well. I woke up my girlfriend immediately and told her what happened. I don't know if this has anything to do with what happened, but I'm Native American, and when I told my traditional relatives about it, they gave me a possible answer to what I saw. I live in the heart of a city in Arizona, by the way. If you guys have any questions, I'll try my best to answer, but I'm sorry if I have this formatted annoyingly. This is my first post. I've only told a few people about this. I was on vacation at the Edgewater Hotel in Gatlinburg, Tennessee with my family, and we were in the hot tub, which was indoors. In this indoor area was also a swimming pool and hotel rooms lined up next to the pool. My parents needed to go to our hotel room for some reason, which was about a 15-second walk away, and they left me alone in the hot tub. I was the only one there in the entire pool area. I was enjoying the hot tub and decided to walk around in it, and as I was walking towards the middle of the hot tub, my feet slipped from under me, and I discovered it was much deeper than I thought when I sank to the bottom of it, and for some reason I couldn't gain any footing. I remember panicking and flailing, trying to reach the surface, and my feet kept slipping at the bottom. I very quickly reached the point where I couldn't hold my breath any longer. This may sound crazy, but I very vividly remember breathing in water at this point, and as in I inhaled water, not swallowed, but actually inhaled a half breath worth of water. I still remember the sensation of water entering my lungs, but there was no pain. I then had the realization that I was about to die, and in that moment I felt a hand grab mine and pull me out of the water. I looked up and there was an old man smiling at me. I looked back at him in shock for several seconds, speechless, before saying, "Thank you." He continued smiling and never said a word. I then ran to the hotel where I found my parents arguing about something. I tried to tell them what just happened, but they wouldn't let me speak. Then I ran back out to try to find a man who saved me, and I couldn't find him. I even went to the reception area, and asked if they had seen an old man pass by, and no one had seen him. I realized at this point that it was an angel that saved me. How my 6 year old brain knew this, I don't know, but I still have no doubt that it truly was an angel and not a person who saved me. I began to get a bit self-conscious of my weight. I wasn't overweight, but I certainly wasn't skinny either. High school had long since passed, and my metabolism curtly reminded me that I couldn't keep eating the same careless way without putting at least a nominal effort into shedding some pounds. After a few rounds of publicly embarrassing myself at the local gym, I decided to try something a little easier. I lived within walking distance of a beautiful park and began hiking. It had a variety of trails, of which the beginner trails were the only ones even close to my skill level. I could take a nice walk at my own pace, away from the judgmental eyes of meathead gym rats with listening to some audiobooks. It wasn't going to result in drastic weight loss by any means, but at least it was some sort of physical activity. I soon realized hiking wasn't all that bad, and if you could put aside the sweating and the bug bites. Oh God, the bug bites. The fresh air and pleasant scenery relaxed me, and the low impact cardio would definitely help to jumpstart my sluggish metabolism. I was tearing through audiobooks at record speed, and I found myself nearly finished with what had seemingly been an unending list of them. I'm sure most people would have preferred to have just basked in the glory of nature, listening to the chirping of birds and the rustling of leaves, but I'm the sort of individual who feels as though if I wasn't constantly multitasking, I was wasting my time. My small slice of forest, which really wasn't all that much of a forest at all, was only a few miles from suburbia in any direction, and as a result had no issues of threatening wildlife like bears or cougars. If we did, I'd never heard or encountered them. There may be a pack of coyotes roaming in the woods that the trails cut through, but even if I heard them coming, I doubted I would have any chance of getting away. The earbuds stayed in on my walks, my mother's warnings of stranger danger and to always be completely aware of your surroundings be damned. I generally wasn't one to take risks or put myself in potentially dangerous situation. Hiking in the woods was on the very edge of my comfort zone. I reasoned that as long as I stayed on the trail, everything would be fine. It would be nearly impossible to get lost or injured. After a few months of my new hobby, I was on a trail I had traversed countless times. My wireless earbuds died, and I mentally scolded myself for forgetting to charge them the night before. I decided I would just cut my walk short for that day. As I took the silent earbuds out and made an about face, heading back where I came from, I heard something. A sound so faint it was nearly imperceptible. After a few seconds it came again, still distant but audible enough that if I still held and strained my ears, I could just barely make it out. It sounded like a symphony of tinkling bells, certainly not something that would naturally occur in the forest. I'd just begun to walk away when I heard it again. There was no mistaking it. That was definitely bells. It sounded like those little Christmas sleigh bells my mom used to hang on the door around the holidays. It was mildly curious, sure, but my interest had waned and I began to walk away once more. After all, it was just a hint of bells in the woods. A cat probably got its collar caught on a bush and The wind was making the little bell ring, I reasoned. What stopped me for the third time was a flash of white flickering through the trees, coinciding perfectly with the peal of bells. For some reason, unbeknownst to me, I held my breath and counted. After 5 seconds, I saw that flash of white again, the bell sound following suit. Now, the bells were louder, almost as if the source had grown closer. My curiosity overriding my sense of self-preservation, I did something I regret to this day. I took a few steps off the trail towards the sound. I thought if I just kept the trail in my line of sight and didn't stray too far, I'd be fine. Carefully taking a few steps into the overgrown wilderness, mincing my way through the branches and roots, I froze, glancing around, trying to spot the source of the strange noise. At first, I didn't see anything. I heard the bells now chiming in 5 seconds intervals and thought I saw the wind flutter leaves in front of me at the same time the bells rang. My blood ran cold as I realized my mistake. The source of movement wasn't leaves, but something else. 4 figures of what appeared to be masses of moss and lichen took a single lurching step forward every 5 seconds. They were vaguely human-shaped blobs of green and brown. It reminded me a bit of those ghillie suits I've seen soldiers wear on TV, though I couldn't think of any logical scenario in which soldiers would be in the woods wearing ghillie suits and ringing bells. I should have just walked away from the odd sight, gone home and taken a nice nap. Instead, I remained motionless, studying the strange moss shapes. Something about the way they were moving unsettled me on a primal level. The forest floor was covered in fallen branches and other obstacles, yet every time they moved it looked as if they simply glided across the forest floor. Each step covered an unnatural amount of distance. They weren't particularly tall, they yet moved with a curiously strange large stride. I shook my head, wondering if this was heat-stroke-induced hallucinations. There must be a reasonable explanation. Perhaps a strange military training exercise, or some weird kids playing dress-up, or on the extreme, a cult doing some messed-up ritual stuff. A second sound weaved its way to my ears. In addition to the bells, there now seemed to be singing. I couldn't make out words nor the tune, yet it was distinctly musical all the same. In the front of the moss figures stood yet another figure. This one, instead of various mosses, wore a sheet of simple white fabric. This time, as the moss figures simultaneously took their lunging step forward and the bells rang once more, the white figure appeared. It twirled, like a ballerina doing a pirouette before disappearing so quickly I would have missed it if I had blinked. When it appeared once more and did its strange little spin, the white fabric clung slightly to the face of whatever remained beneath the fabric. The moment I glimpsed the ghostly visage, my body was no longer my own. I froze, my jaw slack and my arms hanging limply at my sides. After 5 seconds, I took a step forward, doing a perfect pirouette in tandem with the white figure. My mind was in a haze. I wasn't concerned in the slightest by the lack of control over my own body. With each ring of the tinkling bells, I stepped closer to the moss figures until I had fallen in line with them. It felt like I was experiencing everything in the third person, watching myself walking and twirling every 5 seconds like a well-trained pet. The strange, implacable musical tone rose to a crescendo, growing more urgent with every rendition. It was a beautiful song, the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Paired with the bells, I never wanted to hear anything else. Only a few moments had passed and I was already more than comfortable tossing away my life to fall in line with these piles of moss, twirling through the woods. As I moved, I lost track of time. As the strange march continued, the forest started to change colours, or more accurately, the colours became more vibrant. The greens transformed into a lime instead of the usual emerald tone of the woods. The sunlight pierced through the leaves in beams of glittering orange, iridescently shining in such breathtaking shades. If this was a dream, I was happy to remain in it forever. Soon I started to hum along with the songs, simultaneously not knowing the words and yet knowing nothing but them. I was hardly aware of my body. My feet moved, yet I didn't feel them touch the ground. I felt nothing aside from the sun rays caressing my face. When I did catch brief glimpses of my arms, I saw a flash of green winding its way up my fingertips towards my arms. Somewhere, buried in the deepest recesses of my being, a part of myself was screaming, fighting to get back in control. If I didn't get away, would I become moss like the ones I was following behind? Is that what my fingers were turning into? It looked too bright to me, moss, but I didn't want to take any chances. I needed to leave before things escalated. That aware part of myself was so small it nearly didn't register. I didn't think I could break out of this march. I'd already succumbed to the peaceful feelings and beauty surrounding me. There was no point in going back to my normal life. That small part of myself should just accept it and be silent so I could just fall asleep. It did feel like falling asleep, like I was wrapped in a warm pile of blankets, a cool oasis with rain pattering around me. That feeling of a perfect time to sleep, I wanted nothing more than just to let that feeling take me under. Then a thought came from the minuscule part of me still resisting. What had gotten me to come closer to start with? It wasn't the bells, not really. I could have walked away at any time until I saw that flash of white, that flash of a face under that white sheet. Suddenly, an urge stronger than just submitting myself completely seeped through. I saw a face. I couldn't remember what that face looked like, only that I needed to see it again. That urge was the only thing that saved me. When the next set of bells came, I willed myself to take a bigger step forward, needing to get to the front of the line, needing to overtake the blankets of moss. None seemed to notice I was getting closer and disrupting the order of things. When I should have been one step away from bumping into one of the moving blankets of moss, I took another step with a twirl, finding myself in front of it. They didn't step aside from me. They didn't react. I didn't even remember passing them. And yet, I was in the middle of the line. My humming was faltering and falling out of sync as I was focusing so much on taking larger steps. Fighting through the hazy, dreamlike state that overcame me, I kept going. The urge of that mystery face, my sole motivation. With each step, the colours began to flicker and warp. The beautiful forest I had just seen moments before was becoming duller, leaching back through the normal colours. Seeing that beauty fade caused such a deep ache in my chest, I nearly abandoned my quest of seeing the white figure's face. That ever-growing conscious part of me, I felt like just the smallest of glances of the white figure would be worth it. The song was fading the closer I got to the front line. When I finally was in front of the last moss blanket, I only heard the normal forest sounds. It took every ounce of willpower not to twirl when I heard the bell. My body screamed in protest, my muscles crying out as if some force was tugging at them all at once to move. Still, I stayed, waiting in agony for the white shape to appear. When it did, I was in such pain I didn't even see the face hidden under the sheet. Knowing I would not be able to have another chance, I reached out my hand trying to touch the sheet before it faded. I would either faint from the pain or be forced back into the march. My fingers touched the soft fabric the moment before our leader faded. It broke the routine and turned its face to look at me. All my pain went away and my breath caught as I looked at the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Beyond those colours of the forest I saw before, beyond any human might have ever laid eyes on. Nothing could ever have the right to hold that much wonder, and yet it was right in front of me. Colours around me rushed in, making me wonder if I was going to be part of the march again, but that calm feeling only lasted a second. The face that was looking over at me gave a shocked expression. A small intake of air was heard, then the face melted away into pure, clean water. The water dropped to the ground, the dirt absorbing it in seconds. The white sheet in my hand faded away, leaving me alone and confused in the woods. The sense of loss that was carved into my chest was so deep it drowned out all other sensation. After a few seconds of confusion, I looked around, realizing I was not on the trail. Pain came flooding into my limbs. My legs felt like they were on fire and the soles of my feet throbbed. Sweat stung the numerous scratches covering my face. I felt like I was moments away from collapsing. I forced myself to stay awake, to try and figure out what was going on and recall why I was so beat up. Looking around, I saw no traces of the moss figures or anything that could tell me what had transpired. I felt like I walked for days. My throat was so dry, I couldn't speak or try to call for help. Stumbling forward, each step a miniature battle. If I lost a single one, I would die in that forest. When my body did finally collapse, I was so exhausted and dehydrated, I wasn't even aware I found the trail again. I looked like the Walking Dead and felt like it. Clothing torn from the brushes, bug bites all over, and any exposed flesh scratched. I was in a sorry state when a family found me on the trail. Without them, I may very well have died. I woke up in the hospital, equally as confused as the police. I was missing for 3 days. As far as they could tell, I spent those 3 days just walking aimlessly in the woods. They questioned me, seeing if I somehow got lost or walked off on purpose. I didn't have a believable answer for them, so I just lied. I told them I went off the trail for a washroom break in the middle of the hike and didn't remember much of what happened after. It was the best I could come up with. I felt as if it could be the truth. What I saw could have been a dream while I was in the hospital. It did feel so very dreamlike after all. After recovering, I was very close to convincing myself that my brain just made up the moving moss blankets and that face, and I was so desperately wanted to see again. Weeks after the incident, I was in bed at home staring at the ceiling. I found it hard to sleep no matter how long I tossed and turned. I just stared up in the dark, almost as if my body was waiting for something my brain wasn't aware of. I haven't gone hiking since. I avoid any kind of wooded area. I was now terrified at just how easily I fell under the spell of whatever I came across in the woods. Real or not, I didn't want to risk it. My window was open, letting the sounds of the leaves rustling drift into my room. Along with the normal sounds of the night, I heard it. Some bells. I shot up in bed, straining to hear more, counting to 5 and gripping my blankets in anticipation over the bells that never came. Staying awake for hours, I didn't give up hearing it. I counted to 5 over and over again until I drifted off to sleep. The incident in the woods remained in the back of my mind as the years passed. I sometimes thought I heard the bells in the wind during warm summer days. Only recently have I started to hear them more clearly. My boots have been sitting by the door, untouched. Every time I hear those chimes, I find myself automatically moving towards them. I fear someday I won't be able to stop myself, that I'll just put on my hiking boots for the last time and go back into those woods, trying to find that figure hiding such a perfect face under that white sheet. I hear the bells more often now, and who knows when that day is going to arrive. I feel as if it might be soon.